Amphibia was a show of incredible quality. It was one of the few great shows on Disney XD, which has slowly made that channel one of the most viewed in my home. Amphibia, Owl House, Big City Greens, Gravity Falls, just to name a few that currently have my attention. Sadly, Amphibia has ended, and boy did it end. It was everything we expected it to be. I couldn't help but be sad over it, given it means that there is no more new episodes. But I would rather a show I love have a series finale rather than be cancelled, especially if it means we reach a conclusion to the arcs we began with. In the past, I made two what-ifs. One was what if Anne was sent to the Boiling Isles, and the other was what if Luz was sent to Amphibia. You all seem to like those, so I thought that the time would be perfect, since Amphibia's come to a close, to finish the story we started earlier. Without further ado, let's get into it. When last we left our heroes, they were battling King Andreas in his castle. Luz used the same growth spell that Maddie and her siblings had used to get the edge on him and brought the castle crashing down. A moment later, Marcy sends her and the Plantars back to the real world, but ends up paying the price for it. As Luz calls out to her, the portal closes, and she, as well as the Plantars, find themselves in the real world. Luz decides the best place to go would be her home, but cautions the Plantars that her mother might be a little freaked out if a bunch of talking frogs come out of nowhere at her, so she asks them to wait back while she explains. They would get to her home and Luz would open the door. She would call out for her mom and Camilla would come and give her a hug and ask if she had a good time at camp. Luz swallows and pushes through her nerves. She tells her that she never made it to camp. She tells her that she went through a portal and ended up in a strange world inhabited by frogs known as Amphibia. At first, Camilla doesn't believe her and thinks that the camp just didn't do its job very well, but Luz tells her that it's true and presents the Plantars as proof. Camilla is stunned. At first she's scared, but later she seems a little more open to it. Given how easily she accepted V in the original series, I don't see her acting too different. Speaking of V, a basilisk escaping the Boiling Isles has come through, seeking refuge from the Emperor's Coven, and wouldn't you guess, she takes the form of Luz, meaning that there are two Luzes running around here. Luz begins to explain her story, how she went through a strange door that led her to a world called Amphibia, and how she lodged with the Plantars. She recounts all of the adventures they had, down to their escape from Andreas. Camilla is shocked and tells Luz that it sounds like she enjoyed her time there. Luz admits that she sort of did until the end when Marcy was stabbed. Camilla states that she's glad that Luz is safe and sound, but how long will that last? A cloak bot has made its way to the real world from Amphibia, attempting to find Luz and the Plantars. Camilla decides to house the Plantars, all while they try to find the portal back to Amphibia, but strangely it no longer exists. It seems to be gone, and due to that they can't get home. Luz promises though that she'll do everything she can to get them back to her world. Because of everything, they try to resume a normal life. Luz catches up on her doctor and dentist visits to make sure that she didn't catch anything or end up with tooth troubles while in Amphibia, away from conventional medicine and toothpaste. Meanwhile, the Plantars are trying to understand the human world, and Sprig has discovered anime. He streams the entire series of Monster Slayer Academia in one sitting, and most of the Plantars, including Hot Pop, are watching it as well. In an attempt to make it possible for them to function in this world, Luz devises a spell using the same methods that Maddie had taught her to create a potion that causes anyone to think that the Plantars are humans, unless they have knowledge or look too deeply. A sort of mental disguise spell. Meanwhile, V, the basilisk, is attempting to have a semi-normal life as well. However, the cloakbot finds her and attempts to attack her, causing destruction through Graysfield. Luz notices and sees that it's one of Andreas's weapons and attempts to defeat it. She perfects the growth spell that she learned from Maddie and allows it to localize the growth to a specific part of her body at a time, which in this case is her fist. She uses it to smash the bot and send it fleeing. Luz is startled to find that the girl she's defending looks exactly like her, with noticeably different features, including fluffy ears and strange pigmentation around her eyes. Luz asks who she is, and V explains herself to the stranger, who obviously has seen far stranger things. She explains that she's a basilisk from the Boiling Isles. Luz has never heard of such a place, and V says that it's a place strong with magic, as opposed to this world, and that she would never want to go back. She also says that she's low on magic and can't keep transforming unless she eats more. Luz says that she's a witch and can help her out, and so Luz brings her back to her home as well. Meanwhile, the cloakbot continues to repair itself in hopes of finding and killing Luz. Camilla is shown V by Luz and asks if she's another friend from Amphibia, and Luz says she doesn't actually know her, only that she was in trouble and from another world like the Plantars were. Camilla smiles awkwardly and nods. You would too if you were a single mother of one and suddenly has to feed 5 mouths on your salary. But Camilla is a kind woman and won't turn down someone in need, so she brings her into the home as well. V is surprised by the Plantars, but Luz explains it to them as well. V doesn't seem as interested in the anime and games that Sprig and Luz are into, so she tends to hang with Hop Pop and Camilla more often. As time passes, Sprig decides he wants to do some exploring, and in doing so, he accidentally stumbles into a trap and is caught by Jacob Hopkins. Jacob Hopkins begins to study Sprig at first. He thinks he's human, but being one of the few people who can see through the disguise spell's properties due to all the ways searching for weird things, Hopkins notes that Sprig isn't human. He wonders what he is. Is he a monster? Demon? He looks like a frog. Perhaps a frog demon. Those exist somewhere on Mars, right? Hopkins takes Sprig back with him to the Gravesfield Historical Society Museum's back room, where he leaves him in a cage and plans to dissect him later. After Sprig doesn't come home, Luz decides to go after him. She isn't sure where to start. V reminds her that she's a basilisk and can essentially smell magic, and if Sprig is under a particular spell that's designed to hide who he really is, she might be able to sense him. So Luz agrees and begins to search Gravesfield with V. Some people would turn their head to see what looks like two versions of Luz, but Luz explains this by saying that V is a cousin from another state. They pick up a scent nearby and track it to the Gravesfield Museum. Luz sneaks in with V and manages to find Sprig, but before they can get him out, Hopkins returns and sees her. A short battle ensues over him, with it ending only with Luz casting a spell that lets her erase Hopkins' memory of everything that has happened in the past few days and escapes. For a few days, the Plantars lay low, but cabin fever begins to set in, and so they decide to go out on the town. However, the Cloakbot, who has been partially repaired and is currently under the necessity to kill Luz before the bomb in its chest goes off. After a short chase, it corners them. V attempts to defend her new friends as best she can, but is cast aside and wounded by the robot. This causes Luz to grow angry, in which a quick blue flash in her eyes can be seen and her hair appears to flash blue, which gives her the strength to strike the robot so hard she sends it into space before it self-destructs. Luz would pass out. The Plantars would come to her side and check on her. V would ask her what happened. "What kind of magic was that?" she asks Luz. Luz looks up. "I don't know. I just got so angry and felt a floodgate of calamitous power open up, and it gave me the strength to defend you guys." They help Luz to escape and get back home. The Plantars would tend to V and Luz's wounds, specifically wrapping Luz's bloody knuckles and V's wounds on her arms. Sprig's birthday comes up, and so he wears his crown of mud and contemplates his life up to that point, which doesn't take very long. After that, Luz decides to take the Plantars out to a place that might be fun, going to one of those animatronic play restaurants. Hop Pop enjoys the pizza. Polly, having too much FNAF, refuses to let the animatronic mascots out of her sight and later gets lost in the ball pit. Sprig has the time of his life, and V feels she has finally found some semblance of a normal life. Luz is just enjoying her time back in her home world. However, it doesn't last long as Mr. X begins to search for them. Having gotten some odd footage of lights and an object launching into space that could not be identified, and finally a massive explosion in the upper atmosphere, Luz cuts the party short and attempts to escape with the Plantars, but Mr. X has the CIA surround the restaurant. Luz has V turn into one of the Plantars and fits the four into a ventilation shaft to help them escape. Luz, knowing she's just a regular human, can pass through without suspicion, and attempts to do so, but is stopped. However, having no proof or evidence, they're forced to let her go. Luz escapes with V and the Plantars. Meanwhile, in Amphibia, Marcy is still alive, and is being rescued by General Yunan and Olivia, but is later recaptured and forced to become the host to the Core, a massive supercomputer that is the one in charge over even Andreas. Grime and Sasha settle into Wartwood and are accepted as part of the town. Meanwhile, Anne and the Plantars continue to search for a way to get home. Luz mentions the door, which V notes is where she came through. Together they begin to discuss how it works. V mentions that it uses Titan's blood and powerful magic. Together, Luz and the Plantars begin to search for Titan's blood. At around this time, Christmas occurs, and the Plantars are surprised by how it's celebrated. Another drone is sent after them from King Andreas, but it is defeated. Traveling about, they're led back to the Gravesfield Museum, where they discover through V that one of the items within possesses a portion of Titan's blood, which will allow them to open a portal. Despite how wrong they feel it is, they steal from the museum and use it to prepare a ritual to open the portal. But the portal doesn't seem to open. V asks Luz to allow her to siphon some of that blue magic power that Luz seems to possess. She allows it, and V uses it to aid in the ritual. This causes the portal to open. Luz looks back at her mother and tells her that she needs to go make sure that everything is okay. Camilla understands and tells her to go. Luz travels through and ends up back in Amphibia. Here they join the resistance and help Sasha bring down a robot factory. Sprig and Ivy, having finally been reunited after quite a while, spend as much time as possible together. And when a mission from Sasha has them separated to destroy Andreas's cannons, they forge a letter which makes it harder for their partners, Fern and Stumpy. Sprig and Ivy finally agree to separate to fulfill the mission and end up scolded by Sasha thereafter. Most of the series up to that point remains the same. Andreas' plan finally reaches fruition when he decides to attack Earth. Using the music box, he opens a portal up. The Resistance attacks, but are mostly defeated and captured. Andreas televises his invasion and plans, stating that they will conquer Earth for its resources in an effort to conquer more impressive worlds. The United States fights back by sending a battalion of tanks to fire off against the hovering castle, but finds that it does little damage. When the tanks fail, the general calls Mr. X. Meanwhile, in the castle, Luz uses some of her prepared spells to break free of her restraints, and helps all of the others escape as well. They manage to meet up with Mr. X and their partner, Jenny, who is informed of the issue and helped to prepare with Camilla's help. Marcy, within the mindscape of Darcy, is enticed by King Andreas, who is the mind of the core essentially, with her fantasy world, but she refuses when she knows her friends need help. Sasha and Grime fight against Darcy, but Grime loses an arm. In the end, they manage to sever the Neuralink and free Marcy from it, and the helmet crawls away. Luz faces off against King Andreas with her magic spells and her calamity power and manages to defeat him. They then return the castle back to where it came from. However, they're greeted by the red moon over Amphibia growing closer. Luz, Sasha, and Marcy are all together in Amphibia again, and with the Resistance celebrating their victory over Andreas and the core, but unknown to them, the core still lives and is controlling the moon. They rush to the castle and to the box. Luz, Marcy, and Sasha connect their hearts to the power of the stones and attempt to face off against the core. As the moon grows closer, it releases robots to protect itself from Luz and the others, but Andreas steps in with his own army of robots and attempts to buy them some time. However, the power isn't going to last much longer, and so Luz takes the other two jewels and begs them to give her the power to stop this catastrophe. The gems shatter and grant her all of their power, which she then uses, stylizing her attack like a Kamehameha. She uses the beam to destroy the core and moon all at once, though this rush of power came with a cause, turning Luz to stone and eventually to dust. However, she's met with the image of the Guardian, who chooses Luz to be the successor of the Guardian. She's revived and reunited with her friends. After a tearful goodbye, Luz returns home with Sasha, Marcy, and V. Despite the fact that they offered to take V back to her own world, she declines and wishes to remain in the human world to live the rest of her life free of chains. As time passes, Luz begins to grow up, and while she never loses her childlike wonder, she grows into a responsible human being. She also keeps contact with Sasha and Marcy, the latter of which she plays competitive video games with every Tuesday. And that is the end of our What If. I hope it's everything you expected it to be. Amphibia was a very special show, and it's another one that Disney knocked out of the park. I'm sad to see it leave, but I'm glad it's going on good terms and with a full story. The sad truth is, the Owl House isn't going to have the same. Though the story will be completed, the third and final season has been rushed into 3 44-minute episodes that will wrap it up, as it was cancelled by Disney before it could truly reach its climax. And though this is true, Disney was gracious enough to let them wrap up the story, so the Owl House will receive a proper finale. I just hope it's not overly rushed. And when that happens, you can be sure that you'll see a conclusion to Anne in the Boiling Isles. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more content like this, and to be notified when the conclusion to Anne's version of the Owl House drops, because it's coming. Peace out, my toads, frogs, and legless pollywogs, and always remember, Frederator loves you.